Well, hello everyone and welcome back. I've been wanting to do some videos for a while on more general software engineering topics and just generally how to write good software. I'm no expert, but I thought a good way to approach this might be to basically work on some projects that I've been wanting to do and take you along for the ride effectively. So, let's get started. One of the main projects I'm working on at the moment that I've been wanting to use for my other projects is basically a really simplified CI tool. So that's continuous integration, and basically at its simplest form, what that looks like is a little command line or server application that just runs in the background and watches something that you tell it to for changes, usually a Git repository, and then runs some specified action each time that change occurs. So, I guess let's just get started. So, first things first. Let's create. Oh, and by the way, I generally work in Rust, and this will be no exception. So this is just a standard Rust application, and let's just start at the most simplest level of things. Let's just create a loop that watches a Git. Well, actually, even simpler than that. Let's just create some code to start by cloning a Git repository. So get rid of the default contents, and there are a couple of ways I could approach this. As in, there are a couple of libraries I could use to do this, or a couple of actually there are a couple of approaches and a couple of libraries I could use to approach this. Obviously, the most sort of in some ways the simplest and but also hackiest approach would be to effectively just call the Git command line tool to do all this. I won't be doing that because it's got a few limitations. Obviously, you have to call the command line version of Git, which has problems in that you don't know that it's installed, and also it's harder to get good feedback and good outputs from that. So a better approach here is to use a library that knows about Git. As far as I know, for Rust, there are basically two main Git libraries. There's the Git2 crate, which is a wrapper around the libgit, which is a C, I believe, library for Git. And then there is the Gitoxide project, which is a full reimplementation of Git and its protocols in Rust. Now, unfortunately, last time I tried to use Gitoxide, it was still very much in development and didn't really have the capability and APIs I needed to achieve what I was trying to do. So for this job, I'm, for at least for now, going to work with libgit because it's mature and does everything I need. So let's go ahead and add that as a dependency, because to clone a repo we just need something to do it with. So the next step will be to basically go and clone some repository. This is basically open to you to could be anything, whether that's something you've hosted, GitHub, GitLab. But anyway, let's do something slightly. Let's just clone the Git repository for the Git2 library. So to do this, we need to call Git2, and now we need to go grab our URL. I've got another monitor over here, by the way. Actually, two of them, but alright, yes. And then we need to also specify where to store it to. So let's just be really lazy and say /repo repository for now. And it's still complaining about something. Yes, so we also need to. This could also throw an error. So just for now, let's just unwrap this. That should be fairly simple. Let's see if it works. Well, that's a good sign. We've got a repository directory and it has contents in it. So what we've just done is we have created a repository, we've cloned a repository, sorry, and we have its contents. So the next step will be to work out some way to detect a change. So the simplest way to do that for a Git repository on a specific branch is to check if there's been a new commit. And the easiest way to do that is each commit in Git has a commit ID. So we just need to check if that commit ID, changes at any point in time. So first thing we need to do is get the commit ID of the latest commit, but also we need to tell it what branch we need to do that on. So alright, so we've now extracted the we've now opened the repository, so we've cloned it and we've opened it, and we're now getting the commit ID of the latest commit, which I believe should be implicitly the latest commit on master because it's the default branch. So now we need to do the next step, which is basically detect when something changes. And the simplest way to do that is through a process called polling. Now I could potentially use other things like the GitHub or GitLab or GitHub API or things like that. I at the moment won't use that because polling gives me a generic solution that will work with 99% of repository providers, and in fact will work with 95% of other things that aren't necessarily even a Git repository. So we can do a simple polling setup. So what that generally looks like is just a loop, and since we don't want to hold things up too much, and to make this simpler, we should also make this all asynchronous. So we will need to add another dependency, which in this case, the usual one I use for async is the Tokyo library for Rust. So now we can just we can now make the main function asynchronous. And then just add basically a wait or a sleep. So we've now got asynchronous main, but as you can see, we have already cloned the repository and it's complaining about doing it twice. So we also need to only clone if it doesn't already exist. Okay, so now we've got this thing where it will just loop forever. And now we can start adding our checks into there. So for the repository, we need to get some way to fetch the latest version. So we need to take the repository and get the what's called a remote. So basically the thing that represents the remote version of the repository. So that's in this case is on GitHub. So let remote and I guess this will work. So hopefully this will go to the remote. If I could spell, it'd be good. And now we want to fetch the latest version of the current branch from that remote. So before this, we actually need to get the current state, which we've actually got up here. So, but now we just need to update the head to point to the latest commit. So we need to do some Git magic, basically. Yeah, this will look like black magic. I'm copying from some stuff I've experimented with before. Okay, so now we have our repository in the latest state. What we need to do now is get the new commit ID. So get our new ID, and now we need to compare it to the old one. So now we should be able to detect if something happened. Time to see if it runs. Now, obviously, the problem here is we're pointing to someone else's Git repository. We don't know if or when they'll actually commit something. So what we want to do is actually create something we can test with. So to do that, we want to create a what's called a bare Git repository locally, so that we can actually test if something's changed. So let's just stop this for now. See if I can remember how to do this. Git. Looks like I've done it before. So let's create a test Git repository. And now we want to just go and add some file to that Git repository. So let's create a new file. Let's add that to a file. Okay, select the repository. We're now going to change this to be the local Git repository. See if this works. Welcome to software development. We've got an error. Fortunately, we have an error code. Okay, so it looks like it was just some old dirty state. Okay. So you can see we're now well, looks like it's doing nothing because nothing's changing at the moment. So now we're going to go to the Git repository, and we're going to add another file. So we've added another file, and now we get to see if it works. And as you can see, once the timeout happened and it looped back to the start, it said something changed, though it's saying it every loop. So we now need to make sure it only tells us if something has changed since the last time. And once again, you can see we've actually detected the change, but now it's only firing once every time the change happens. That's all I'm going to do for now. Very simple setup so far, but hopefully next time we can make some more progress, and see you all next time.